guys, and welcome to my channel. In today's video we will be painting these ballet shoes. All the materials I'm using for this painting you can find listed down in the description box. Also, I wanted to mention that you can free download the sketch for this painting from my website, and the link for that is also in the description box, so feel free to use it. I'm starting off with pre-wetting my paper and only the parts where the skin is. For skin, I'm using colors Ultramarine, Mother Lake Red Light, and Raw Sienna. Those are also the colors I will be using throughout my painting process, only colors, except for Sepia that I will be adding for painting some shadows. For painting skin, I usually use those colors because I like their combination, except sometimes instead of raw sienna, I can use cadmium yellow medium depending on how the fair skin is or how lighted it is. And this time I chose, as I said earlier, raw sienna. I also wanted to encourage you to not be afraid to use color for skin, because keep in mind that watercolors do dry lighter and you don't have to be scared that they will be too dark when you paint the skin, or maybe thinking, wow, this is not the colors for skin. You should try finding a mix that you're comfortable with and that you like. I know you don't all have the same colors as I do, but just try to mix some cooler red and warmer blue. I like best, I must admit, ultramarine, but I think maybe you can use Prussian blue if you don't have ultramarine, even though I think that most of people do, and I think that a lot of brands have ultramarine and use it in their standard palettes, so I'm guessing you do have it. And if you don't, well, just try mixing a couple of blues with reds and try to find the color you think is right. Of course, don't forget to add yellow to it. As I said, I'm using cadmium yellow medium or raw sienna. Maybe you can try raw sienna. If you don't have either of those two colors, maybe yellow ochre. This painting will require layers, so keep in mind that there will be layering, and I think it asks for a lot of patience, so bear with me because I think that the final result is worth it. Since I decided that the light in my painting is coming from right, with that in mind, I am painting shadows and highlights, making the right side of my legs from the viewer's point lighter and the left side darker and in shadows. After the first layer from my paint dried, I am using Sepia for some shadows and also placing it on the sides where my darker parts of the skin already are, and in that way giving them more depth and a 3D look. I will be drying the paint on my skin for a couple of times and layering that darker and lighter parts for more realistic look. While painting shadows and highlights, I'm also keeping in mind the structure of the bones on legs, so I'm placing the shadows considering that. As it is noticeable on the final painting, this is not 100% realistic painting. It is more realistic than abstract or impressionist, obviously, but I'm not really trying to make it completely realistic and with too many details, but I do want some details and some realism. And if you're up for maybe more impressionistic or abstract style, by all means you should do whatever you prefer. With this, I'll be finishing off with painting my skin. And after the paint fully dried, I'm moving on to painting ballet shoes. For them, I'm also using the same colors as I did for skin tones, but this time they are more saturated and I'm using a little bit more of Mother Lake red light and a little bit less ultramarine. Before I started to paint ballet shoes, I did pre-wet the paper in that part because I don't want the harsh lines and I do want the soft transitions. While you're watching my painting process, I wanted to mention a few things that I do believe are important to know. Even though some of them I probably already said in my earlier videos, I just want to repeat for those who haven't watched them. And it is concerning the art supplies I'm using and that I think are important. Well, if you're starting off painting, if you're a really beginner and haven't painted before, I believe that even though maybe you are not sure if you even want to do that, if you even want to be painting, my advice to you is not to start painting on a school watercolor paper. I did that and it was horrible. It was so frustrating. I just couldn't have nothing done. And well, after that I did start painting on 100% cellulose watercolor paper, and that was a very big improvement. And if you really do want to learn how to paint, you should at least start with cellulose watercolor paper, 100% cellulose watercolor paper. But if you want to advance, if you want to really learn and get better at it, my opinion is that you should invest in cotton watercolor paper. There is just an amazing difference between cotton and cellulose watercolor paper. And if you try to paint on cotton watercolor paper, your paintings are going to improve immediately, because there are just some things that you just cannot get, the effects you cannot get while painting on cellulose watercolor paper. And for someone who is serious about that and maybe thinking about selling his art one day, that is a must. That is my opinion. Cotton watercolor paper is must. And if you're only doing it for your fun and for yourself, that is fine. Then the cellulose watercolor paper is just fine. But just keep in mind, because I have been asked before why someone's painting doesn't look like mine. They were doing everything I did in my tutorial and just the painting doesn't look the same. Well, the answer probably is in paper, because there is, as I said, there is just some things that you cannot get while painting on cellulose watercolor paper, and that is the reason why I would suggest anytime for you to invest in that supply. In my opinion, the paper is the most important supply, and while the brushes and the paints are also important, they won't make such a big difference in your progress, nor they will show such major advance in your paintings. Second thing to improve on are brushes, and while they won't make such great difference in your paintings, they will definitely make your job a lot easier, and you will see how smoother and better they are at some painting techniques. And the last art supply that I would recommend to invest in is watercolors. And after you have already learned to paint, and after you used cotton watercolor paper, and maybe invest in some brushes, I would recommend at the end investing in watercolors, artist grade watercolors, and especially if you're planning to sell your art. If you're not planning to sell your art, there are just quite good student grade watercolors, and well, I suppose you can keep using them, and that is the place, that is the way to save some money and maybe to stay on a budget. When the paint fully dried, I'm adding just a couple of more details. This time I'm using a detail brush and sepia and painting creases, damps on my ballet shoes. At the end, and as a final step, I decided to make shadows in the ground, and for this I also used the same colors as throughout my painting. With that, I'll be finishing off my painting and also this video. I hope you liked it, you enjoyed it, maybe tried painting this one, and if you did, please like, share, comment, and if you haven't still, subscribe to my channel. Thank you again for watching, and I hope I'll see you next time. Bye!